All right, folks. I'm glad you all heard my mic check. Crisis, crisis averted, I guess. So listen, I heard when I was doing my live stream on Friday about this case that people were freaked out about this 47.1 thing. And I genuinely didn't know what in the hell you guys were talking about because I had not at that point read Lively's 12B6 motion. And I was about to jump in another stream for Brian Koberger. And so I had to figure out myself what you guys were on about. And then I did get an opportunity to read Blake Lively's motion and just my initial thoughts. I can understand why you guys were upset. I get why there was, you guys are freaking out a little bit. You guys were. I haven't watched yet the, I guess there's a Two Lawyers podcast that does streams on these videos, but I got, hey, Two Lawyers says that this lawsuit is going to succeed. Like, I haven't watched that, but I understand why you guys think that. I don't think that this motion is going to be dismissed. I don't think that it's anything to just hand wave away. But whenever you have, now look, I thought that Reynolds' 12B6 motion, I thought it was well written, but it lacked bite because I thought that it was going to be easy to see in the four corners of the complaint where certain things were pled that they said were missing. I will say this, in Blake Lively's complaint, there's two main issues. I mean, really, there's three. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of things that need to be contended with. But let's just take a step back and just put yourselves in my chair, in the mind of a lawyer. And when you're hit with a legal haymaker like that, like, holy shit, statute of limitations is only a year. She published these statements back in 2023. What do? Well, we got a remedy for that. There's legal loopholes, as you might imagine, for how to overcome such things. Wait a minute. He didn't plead any specific defamatory statements and attribute them to Lively. So therefore, his complaint must fail. But you have two categories of defamatory actions. And in the broad spectrum of those two categories, I'm willing to bet that if you had the opportunity to amend in the course of discovery, that could be remedied through an amended complaint. Even a third amended complaint or a second amended, whatever. I think we would be on the second amended complaint. What about the fact that it was privileged communication? You know, what was it? The media privilege or whatever that was, the newspaper privilege. And 47.1. You don't get to make a retaliatory claim of defamation just because you got accused of SA or SH. Yeah, I live in California. I'm not a big fan of that rule because of what I know and how we litigate these cases and what becomes of some of the individuals who are just accused of things. You wouldn't believe. Let me just turn on my screen really quick. You wouldn't believe the number of SH allegations that I've litigated in my career, that I've litigated defending the person that made the allegation that turned out to be false. If I told you the percentage, you would be terrified, and you should be. It's a reason why men have taken on a very different tone nowadays, really since about 2013, 2014, the whole red pill generation, people being extra super cautious about the motives and motivations of, I don't want to just say just women, just people making these accusations in general. It is exceedingly difficult to defend. And when you just decide to label somebody a sexual predator like that, you could imagine that the natural recourse, if you're innocent, would be, well, then I will sue you for defamation, for smearing my good name. Well, California said, yeah, we're not going to play those rules. 47.1. We're going to say that you know what? If you're accused of SH, then no fair cross-suing for defamation. in so many words, is the law in California. Do I agree with it? No, I do not. I think if you're willing to accuse somebody of that, then and you believe in the truth of your claims, then you should let the evidence speak for themselves. And when they cross claim for defamation, I mean, I was just told my clients, look, they're going to do a lot of things. Of course, they're going to cross sue. Why wouldn't they? They're going to try to make you feel the same pressure that they're feeling. But you know where we're going to prevail? We're going to put on evidence, and we're going to let the cards fall upon truth. That's what we're going to do. So, folks, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that it's not an exceedingly well-written motion. It is probably the best piece of legal writing that's come out of the Blake Lively team so far in the litigation. And there are real points of law that need to be contended with, but I'm going to tell you how we're going to attack them. We're going to just take a deep breath. We're going to examine this from 20,000 feet, and we're going to see Baldoni's best course of action and what I fully expect to happen in his opposition. Let's get started. All right, folks. So here we go. Let me get rid of this. So 47.1. California Civil Code is supposed to immunize people who disclose incidents of sexual harassment or retaliation from being sued for defamation or similar claims, so long as they speak without malice. And I'm not going to read word for word the motion. I'm just not going to do that with you folks because I don't have the time. I am going to be streaming and going into this more in depth tonight if you're interested, but it's going to be like 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So I know a lot of you are kind of just left out of that discussion, but I'm going to point to some of this. At least let me share my screen with you. Some just observations that I've made. Here, let me pull this up. There we go. Perfect. All right. So her claims are essentially this, just going through her table of contents. She wants to claim specific and unprivileged statements. Wayfair fails to meet basic pleading requirements to identify specific defamatory statements, which it's true. And when it's true, you have to acknowledge that. But why? Why is it true? If we just look, when you and I, the viewer, have been learning about this case really since December, and it's kind of just come out in bits and pieces, but we're starting to get the gist of the story. We know that through various actions that were taking place from Lively's team, that Baldoni's team was caught up in this idea that, hey, it hasn't happened yet, but there's going to be a time in the future where we think that she's going to just full out go to the media about these SH allegations, and we're going to have to do something about it. And then they form this plan, and they bring out this PR team, and they start trying to formulate a strategy. Jed Wallace comes in, observes what's going on, and decides, you know what? I think the best course in this situation is that we do nothing. But we have that narrative, and we also have the narrative where Ryan Reynolds was so entangled with the production process that he was making himself part of production meetings. He was, on multiple occasions, the two famous blowups that we know about anyway. And we know that as a result of what was going on from Lively's camp, whether you want to attribute that to defamation or to something else, we know that her power and influence over the movie started to grow. After a certain period of time, she was only going to be an actress, and then she ended up as this other thing. What does that suggest? It means that she had specific motivations to perhaps smear the name of Justin Baldoni, as we have talked about. If you just look at the way the stars are aligned in this case, you can't look for the physical, tangible chains that tie the elements together. If I were on the case, I would be looking for the signs of gravity. Where does time and space bend at the result of the actions of Lively and her team? And I think that you have to look no further than there was a distinct point in time where Lively and Justin were friends. And it's well documented that they were friends and that they were friendly. And then at some point of time, Ryan Reynolds got involved, whether it be from jealousy because he was defending the honor of his wife, because how dare somebody question the weight of his wife, recovering from a back surgery, be damned. He gets involved, and then the next thing you know, more demands are made. We got this 17-point list. We even had like a 27-point list. We had demands about wardrobe, demands about going over the budget, demands about post-production editing, the way that we were going to market the film, the specific credits for the film that Justin Baldoni was going to receive, demands for apologies. We have all of these little things. And what was the gravity? What was the evidence that gravity existed? Well, time and space began to bend around Blake Lively and her team, whereby she was getting exactly what she had endeavored to do. So where we might not be able to outright plead malice in this complaint, and make no mistake about it, the amended complaint as to Justin Baldoni is light on facts that speak directly to malice. But what would have been her motivations? Motivations is usually where you find the stars bending. It's usually where you find the roots of malice. And whether it started as like failed flirtations with Justin that escalated into power moves for greater control over the production process or some other thing, I think that you have the beginning of what could possibly be pled a coercive plan that was maliciously implemented with the designed and explicit purpose of exerting greater control of the movie than was previously contracted. And if we're really going into it from 20,000 feet, all of that kind of fits into this narrative where we have defamatory claims that were maliciously made, where she garnered real, tangible assets as a result, greater control over the movie, which would have implications in her future in Hollywood, that were perhaps part of a conspiracy that was implemented by her and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, with the help of their PR team and others, that resulted in breaches of contracts the world over. And we're not going to get into all that stuff. I'm really focusing on the 47.1 stuff. My only point is, even if we concede this idea that Lively has failed, or not Lively, Justin has failed in his First Amendment complaint to sufficiently plead these causes of action to survive a 12b6 motion, at the very least we know, because of what we've come to learn in the time from her complaint to his complaint to his First Amendment to all of these things through the process of discovery. Oh, and by the way, she failed to stay discovery in this case, so we're going to have more information. At the very least, do not freak out. I do not believe that Baldoni's complaint against Lively is going to get dismissed. What I think is going to happen is that the judge is going to allow for this complaint to be amended so that it will survive a 12b6 analysis, and that we're going to have a second amended complaint that will further ferret out what specifically was the conspiracy, why it was objectively malicious, what would have been the motivations, and all of these other things. I think we have a budding story that is pointing towards Blake Lively, because of her husband, And a lot of the other things that we know, look, I mean, fair play to her, the statute of limitations thing, and I'll get to that in a minute, because those are really the two big things, right? 47.1, 1 year statute of limitations. I think that the way that this is factually playing out, it better supports Baldoni's claims than it does Lively's, even if it's not fleshed out completely in the original or the first amended complaint. I think that we're getting there. Even if we got to get to a second amended complaint, I think we'll get there. Where we know for a fact, maybe we don't know for a fact, but they're going to argue it like that, where we know that we now have new facts that were not known at the time of the filing of the first amended, that more likely than not, we're going to be able to cure these deficiencies. I cannot see the judge just deciding, yeah, I'm going to outright dismiss this complaint. I don't see it. It's not going to go down that way. There's no chance that happens. Let me get to some of these because you guys are... Jules, I love you, man. Love you guys. My boat law fam is the best. I don't know how to interpret this emoji, Jules. But she's been a member for 5 months, and we love you. Winks coming through with a 5. Omar, tell the Lord, just letting you know, it sounds like your mic is on the computer, not the professional mic. That's not ideal, is it? And if that's the case, oh, son of a bitch. Well, why don't we just take a pause so that I can cure that right now. Pause, folks. I'm going to fix my mic. How's that sounding? Is that a little bit better? Did that work out? Did I fix the thing? Let's see. Rainbow pickles in the house. It's okay, Omar. It wasn't the issue. Didn't mean to stop the show. Oh, well, I wanted to make sure that the mic was good. Sounds like it's working now. But anyway, with my preamble, let me get into some of how I think Justin is going to attack this motion. And folks, by the way, I'm about to do a live stream with Rosalind Duke in about 20, 30 minutes here or so. She has a bombshell report about possible affidavits of people admitting that they were bribed at the hands of P. Diddy. I'm going to go on her show and we're going to talk about that, but that's coming up next. In the meantime, this 47.1 stuff, it's protected as long as they speak without malice, right? So right now, it's true. In the pleadings, it's very weak. It's very weak on a declaration that malice has occurred somehow. But you have to tie it all in together. And what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to find a way to tie in all of the facts that we know. How does Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' conduct coincide? There is an allegation of conspiracy. An allegation requires multiple individuals with a common goal, with a common scheme, who act in the furtherance of their common scheme for some kind of a gain. In this case, financial. Now, they claimed in their motion there's not been any proof whatsoever that Blake Lively has profited from all of these claims. None. There's no monetary gain that's been pled or whatever. My argument to that has always been it was never about monetary gain for this film individually. It was about erasing the contributions of Justin Baldoni and increasing her contributions in the film to give her bigger influence going forward in the case. That's always what it's been about to me. Um, Baldoni is going to argue that she acted with malice. And that even if these claims that she's talking about, this writing that occurred back in 2023, even if that were the case, it was not exhibited or corroborated by anybody else other than her. That the only explanation for her making these defamatory statements was explicitly because she was trying to change contractual provisions the entire time, the entire way. And also, it's really suspicious to me. It's really suspicious to me that we have these 17 complaints, or the 17-point letter that her husband sits in on this meeting, and they go and they hash all these things out, and Lively is involved in all of that. But it doesn't occur until like there's that initial blow up with Ryan Reynolds. At some point, Reynolds got really involved. And then he started running around to all the people that were surrounding that film, telling him that Justin Baldoni was a sexual predator. I'm not even saying that Baldoni is going to succeed in proving malice. All I'm stating is I think that we know enough to, at the very least, allege based on information and belief that, look, these were the two categories of defamatory statements. Maybe they'll go into more specifics. Maybe they'll uncover more specifics in the course of discovery. But I think, okay, so if they want to say that 17-point complaint that they all talked about and had this meeting over was first acknowledged and published back in 2023, if they want to say that, then she had knowledge of it and she continues to work on the film. And she starts at that point, after she makes those allegations, yeah, it's not, you know what, I can't work with this guy because it's too uncomfortable. It was, I will work with this guy, but you guys got to acknowledge that this happened and you got to make these specific changes for me. And then it was like, we're going to change parts of the script. We're going to change parts of the wardrobe. We're going to change shooting locations. We're going to change all of these things. Everything became at Blake Lively's whims. That's part of it. They allege the Exhibit A, the 168-page timeline. I think that was really important. They're going to try to allege that it was all malicious or whatever, when really I think the way that you could characterize that is like, wait a minute, sexual, what are we talking about right now? This is how I see it in my mind. Here's 168 pages of timeline. We were friends, and then the text message with no teeth, and then we're not friends, and now your husband's mad at me, and now you have all these grievances, and we sit for a contract. We try to write out provisions for nudity writers. We agree to intimacy coordinators, and then you don't want to have the intimacy coordinators. You want to proceed without them. That was your choice. You're choosing not to sign specific portions of the contract that you were instrumental in drafting. And then we have this big meeting, and your husband yells at me. And then we continue to do all these things. I'm continuing to make concessions. I'm continuing to tell you what a great artist and actor and writer and producer you are. But you, for whatever reason, decide that you want to ace me out. You tell me to take less credits, or I forgot what the credit was called. But he's losing movie credits, and she's taking credit for his things. And it was just one thing after another, which at some point where you might not have believed that her intentions were malicious at first because you guys had this friendly relationship, maybe it became readily apparent to you at some point in the future, namely post January 14th of 2024, which would have been when those defamatory allegations would have been due. Maybe he didn't know that they were defamatorily malicious until like August or July, when it was clear that there was no talking to this lady. Her statements don't even make sense. Her demands don't even make sense. And now I'm hearing about, Reynolds thinks I'm a sexual predator, and now she's like leaking this stuff to the press. Now we have a basis to defeat the statute of limitations, because it was not readily apparent yet that she was using her influence to leak defamatory information about Justin Baldoni for financial gains. And that's what brings it into the realm of maliciousness. And that's how we defeat the statute of limitations. And we could amend the complaint to tie all of those things together. That's how I'm seeing it in my mind. I got to admit, I have to imagine in the opposition that they're going to do something sooner. Aside from that, false accusations for personal gain. And we didn't even know that that was happening while it was happening, because the personal gain for her didn't really happen until after. And we're in the moment I was trying to make sense of it all, and I couldn't make sense of it all. And so there is all of that. Let me get rid of this. Thanks, Links, for the 5 and tipping me off to the mic. I really appreciate that. How do I get rid of this? Exactly. No teeth. It's such a weird thing to say to a guy. Let me get back into this. She had a motive to lie. She had a motive to lie for a couple of reasons. Number one, maybe, and I'm just speculating, this is pure speculation, this is worth zero evidentiary or probably argumentary, but perhaps she needed some kind of justification for why the flirty text messages back and forth between you and Justin to give to her husband, Ryan Reynolds. Perhaps he was starting to feel a certain kind of a way because of, maybe she was getting a little bit too friendly with Justin Baldoni at home in her private conversations with Reynolds. And now he's questioning her. Wait a minute, why this and that? You know how it is with insecure men, boyfriends, jealous men, jealous boyfriends, whatever. You give them some, look, I didn't mean to. He's making me feel really uncomfortable and I don't know what to do. I'm just trying to be really nice to him so that he doesn't get the wrong idea. I don't want to make it awkward because we're on the set. And now Ryan Reynolds, who is this guy who was already naturally insecure because he's getting a little bit older, and he's naturally a bully, and he's just naturally a jealous kind of guy. It seems to me, from what I'm gathering from these things, he's no longer upset at her. Now he's going to be her knight in shining armor. I'm going to defend the good name of my wife. And he goes in this weird confrontation about asking Justin about why he would possibly ask Blake Lively how much she weighed. And then this weird outburst that made everybody uncomfortable during this production meeting to address Lively's 17-point list. That was one motivation. The other motivation would have been for personal gain. And all you got to do is follow the communications. Follow the communications where from the end of 2023 to really post-production up to the release of the movie, leading up to the filing of these lawsuits, her influence over the movie became exponentially greater, and that Baldoni had reason to believe way early on that, hey, not for nothing, but something might be up. I don't know where all of this is coming from. Her allegations don't even make sense. We could tie all that together and we could put it in an amended complaint and fit the malicious element to get rid of 47.1 as a thing, because we're going to argue that her allegations were fabricated. They were fabricated because they were so outlandishly ridiculous. And I'll go over this part. I did want to share with you guys. Are you guys on my complaint yet? Yeah. I did want to share this with you because I highlighted, this was the crux of her, man, that's a long table of contents. These were the allegations of sexual harassment. She bullet pointed them. It was this. As set forth in the First Amendment complaint, shooting on the film began on May 16, 2023. Starting on the first day, according to the FAC, each of the following incidents occurred. And this was it. Mr. Baldoni entered Lively's trailer to voice his concerns that Miss Lively looked unflattering in public released photographs. Sexual harassment? At some point in May or June 2023, a simulated nude scene was filmed without an intimacy coordinator present. An intimacy coordinator that was made available to her that she said wasn't necessary. Bruh. Mr. Baldoni discussed orgasming while having sex with his wife. Admittedly, I highlighted it in red because that could conceivably be like a weird and uncomfortable conversation to have with just some random person. But at that point, they were friendly. And so that has the most merit of any of the other claims. This was the other ones. Mr. Baldoni asked Mr. Heath to show Miss Lively while she was eating a video of Mr. Heath's wife giving birth at home, part of which Mr. Heath subsequently showed her. And you guys have seen the screenshot of what that entailed. But sexual harassment? Baldoni improvised while filming romantic scenes because he was off a little bit in the kissing choreography or whatever that they went off, which was consistent with his prior experiences of rehearsing filming scenes multiple times, often with variations. And by the way, we got the video of that. And so that's going to be for a juror to decide. And if you're just following public opinion, it doesn't look very good on Lively's side. And then there was this. Mr. Heath was present in Miss Lively's hair and makeup trailer while she had body makeup removed. And despite her asking him to turn away while they spoke, he may have made eye contact with her at one point and then later apologized after Miss Lively told him that it made her feel uncomfortable. Bruh. She invited them in there. These are the claims. Mr. Baldoni hired a friend to play the obstetrician in a scene in which Miss Lively's character gives birth and in which he would be in close proximity to her genitalia. She knew that was in the script. How was that an allegation of SH? Mr. Baldoni used the word sexy to describe Miss Lively at least 2 times, including once when Miss Lively was wearing a onesie with a big coat, perhaps facetiously. Maybe he was just joking around. Hey, you're wearing like these big Elmo onesie. Oh, that's real sexy. These are the claims. These are the claims. That's the claims. Look, as weak as those claims are the claims. They highlight inconsistencies in her claims. They don't make any GD sense. Baldoni's going to argue that the timing, the delivery, escalation of her accusations basically show the ridiculousness of the accusations are proof in and of itself where a jury's going to decide that these allegations were stupid. And if they're stupid, they weren't made, not if they're stupid, they were made in bad faith because they're ridiculous. No rational person would think that those allegations, the way that they're going to be presented at trial, amounts to sexual harassment. And that's kind of been the problem that we've been talking about her allegations for months now. 47.1 is a new law. I suspect that they're going to argue that 47.1 has not really been fully fleshed out in federal courts. And it's significant that what if you don't learn about defamatory statements that were malicious until well after the publishing? It cannot be the legislative intent of the California legislature to decide that 47.1 was going to be a shield, an absolute shield, to anybody where it was discovered that defamatory statements that were made in the moment were malicious, but you don't discover it until like a year later. It cannot be the case that that's what they were intending. Matter of fact, it should probably be amended to include, what if you could include maliciousness? What would be the time bar to that? Perhaps that's coming. And it's true. 47.1 is a new law. They might assert that 47.1 protects first-person factual accounts, but not third-party media coordination, leaked drafts, conspiracies where you're implementing your husband to go out on the attack and your PR team to go out and leak defamatory stuff that have the same flavor and tenor of your accusations. And look, they got to prove all of that, admittedly. But if they can make it part of their allegations, their causes of action, and the First Amendment complaint, that all of these things line perfectly, the stars line up to make these claims malicious in nature, it's the only plausible explanation about why her harassment claims were so ridiculous, such as to offend a reasonable person under similar circumstances. That is all. With respect to the litigation privilege, she's asserting that it protects statements made in legal findings, fair reporting privilege, and all of that. But you have to distinguish between legal filings and media leaks. She did file something, and that's protected, but that more or less pertains to the New York Times, not really to her, because she leaked those statements by her own admission back in 2023. That's what she said, right? She said it right here in her motion to dismiss. They're going to challenge the timing if Lively or her team spoke to the press before filing any formal complaint, then they're going to say that those statements were not made in connection with a legal proceeding. I don't think that the fair report privilege or the litigation privilege really applies here. Lively is talking about Baldoni has failed to plead malice, and let's be real. He hasn't really ferreted out the malice portion of his complaint yet. He just hasn't. He hasn't. They're going to have to reframe malice. They're going to have to reframe it in an amended complaint. They're going to have to just connect the dots. They're going to argue that malice is a question of fact. It's inappropriate to dismiss complaints at this early stage where we're still gathering facts. We have suspicions because of where the lines. We have suspicions of malice because of how time and space has bended. What we don't have is the actual evidence or the actual tangible evidence of why they've been bent. But we're in the early stages of discovery, and that is coming, and we reserve and should be entitled to the right to amend this complaint once discovery is complete, because we believe it's going to cure these things. And to the extent that we can't cure these deficiencies, then we'll drop the cause of action. Then you're right. Fair play to that. So is this complaint getting dismissed? No, I don't think so. I think that we could identify maliciousness because of everything that we've talked about. They're going to cite, obviously, circumstantial evidence. They're going to point to Lively's efforts to seize creative control, to retaliate after earlier conflicts, the teeth text message or whatever, to harm Baldoni's career because of, I'm assuming that there was concerted effort on that Lively signed off on because Reynolds was hell-bent on ruining this guy's career. He's going to future employers in Hollywood telling them that Justin Baldoni is a sexual predator. Now, that's a fact, a malicious fact that you could tie to Ryan Reynolds. It is, granted, much harder to tie to Blake Lively, but you can't just hand wave away the possibility given the close proximity of the cross defendants. You just can't. So is this getting dismissed? No. Is it a relevant issue that they're going to have to cure under 47.1? Yes. I just think that they could do it. And if they can't do it, we're going to know that because I think they'll admit it, because in their amended complaint, they'll just say, what do you know? I couldn't prove malice. Turns out maybe I was wrong. Is that going to happen? No. I think that they're going to go carefully through all of the discovery, all of the text messages, all of the communications, and try to build threads leading to malice that, when taken all together, form a rope where you're going to pull that shit back into the complaint, where it is going to be something she's going to have to defend against. And by the way, none of this is changing the fact that Justin Baldoni is still going to be able to defend this lawsuit however he wants, and he's going to be entitled to full legal fees, attorney fees, and costs if he's successful in the litigation. He can pose whatever defense and implement whatever evidentiary tricks that he has up his sleeves, regardless of whether or not his complaint is dismissed. This is still going to be a trial. This question is only about whether or not his counterclaim to Blake Lively is going to succeed. And I'm arguing that I don't think that it's dead in the water. Matter of fact, I think it's likely to survive. But I think it's going to probably take a second amended complaint to do it. And I think this judge is going to allow it. I think he's going to probably give them 90 days to amend, to finish discovery. If there's delays in discovery, that will be grounds for a continuance of the deadline and so on and so forth. But I don't think this is getting dismissed outright. We have all of the tenements: abuse of power, bad faith retaliation, weaponization of harassment claims. Their focus was on reputational harm. They knew about his reputation in Hollywood going forward, Ryan Reynolds' involvement, all of those things. So for time purposes, and I'm I'm going to do a follow-up stream tonight on all of these things. I just wanted to kind of put it out there that, look, if you're freaking out about 47.1, it's not the time to freak out about it just now. Just recognize there are weaknesses in Justin's complaint. They did a really good job of raising them. And to me, the biggest issue, the biggest obstacles is not really all the other stuff. It's 47.1. It's this 1 year statute of limitations. And just very quickly, before I go, they're going to, I feel, get over the statute of limitations by simply pointing to the fact that, look, listen, there's a couple of ways. Number one, they're going to talk about the single publication rule. If some statements were never independently published until later, say like in a legal filing or a 2024 article, he could argue that the actual publication date is later than Lively's claims. In other words, this 17 point grievance that she had raised with Wayfair Studios at this production meeting or whatever it was, even if it happened in 2023, whatever the date was prior to January of 2024, he could allege that, look, it didn't really become defamatory until it was published. And that would have been like much, much later. That's one way he could overcome it. The other way is that I think the most obvious one, I mean, there's a couple of other ones, but I think the most obvious is going to be that he's simply going to toll the statutes with this idea that, look, she was raising these complaints. We were dealing with them internally. There was this back and forth monologue really going from the time that she made those complaints initially in 2023 all the way up until what would it have been like October of this year. There were continuing negotiations back and forth about post-production stuff, edits, versions of the movie, advertising for the movie, and they were talking about different things. He didn't know, and it wasn't readily apparent to him, that she had malicious intentions until she filed her complaints. That would reset the statute of limitations to the time where it became readily apparent to him that he was damaged by what has now become a defamatory and malicious statement brought about by circumstantial evidence. Is it a perfect argument? No. Does it need to be ferreted out with facts in an amended complaint? Yes. But does this mean, because these laws exist, that Baldoni's countersuit is dead in the water? Not a effing chance, man. It was a strong complaint. It is not a slam dunk, I'll tell you that much. And I would expect that the arguments in the counter to all of this is going to be that Friedman and his team of attorneys, along with Justin Baldoni, are going to raise some of the arguments, at least, that I've raised here and how they're going to attack this thing. I don't think that there's really a better way to attack the statute of limitations other than to argue tolling the statutes. The relate back doctrine, whatever. He didn't know that she had malicious intentions until certain events occurred. Therefore, statute of limitations would not have begun in January 14th of 2024. It would have begun much later, which makes statute of limitations not really a thing. And 47.1, we can cure that with an amended complaint now that we know more information after having conducted some discovery and plead accurately that not only are there going to be, I have to imagine that they're going to come up with some specific statements that Lively said, and I believe that they're going to be able to attach to those malicious intentions for all of the reasons that I've stated. So, folks, that's all I have for you right now. I'm about to go do a live stream with Rosalind Duke, and we're going to talk about some P. Diddy stuff, because it might be the case that actual judges and attorneys have admitted to taking bribes from P. Diddy, and I'm going to get into all of that on Rosalind Duke's channel. You guys are going to be redirected there just in a bit. Other than that, I am going to be streaming around 9:45 p.m. Pacific time to do a fuller examination of Lively's 12b6, just because I know that you guys are a little freaked out about it. But look, it's not that big of a deal. It's expected. There's attacks to it, and I suspect that those attacks are going to prevail. Worst case scenario is judge is going to make them amend the complaint, and then that's it. I love you, folks. I will see you guys on Rosalind Duke's stream. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.